I'm Drew.
And I'm John. This episode and every future episode is dedicated to the horror hounds and smokers out there who want to expand their knowledge of the genre and have a good time.
Today we're going to talk about VHS 94, the fourth VHS film in the beloved anthology series. We have director Jennifer Reeder with us, the director of the sinister wraparound story Holy Hell. She's going to spill her guts to us in an exclusive interview. All that and more today on High on Horror. Interviews, reviews, and the latest news all rolled into one. Now it's time for Strain Wreck, the segment where John and I discuss which strain we're getting wrecked on in each episode. Today, I got us a couple of options here. We're gonna
what you got?
Yeah, they're both hybrids. They're both fucking beautiful looking. They both smell good. They're both gassy. We got Perfecto here with you'll like this bag. That's all I'm gonna say. So we got Perfecto here, and then we got Dunce.
Dunce.
Dunce is just it's like it's a form of runts.
Smoking and you dunce.
It's and yeah. So I want you to check these out. I mean, dude, they're so good.
Hey.
You pick which one we're gonna do tonight.
Okay, the dunce does just look like nerds. Oh, Perfecto. Okay, we got James Harden playing defense. You don't really follow basketball, but
No, I don't care for the bag. I want what's in the bag.
James Harden's defense, you could compare it to like BJ Penn's stamina or like Luke Rockhold's chin. You know what I mean?
Oh damn! Or Conor McGregor and Chris Weidman's legs.
Ugh. Those were rough. But also taking the shot is my man Steph Curry with the shot. They cook it with the sauce, Chef Curry with the pot, boy.
Yeah, I know. No
360
idea.
with the wrist, boy.
I have no idea what any of that shit means.
I would not expect you to.
You might as well just like.
Okay, let's see which one smells better. I smelled Steph.
Yeah, that bag is kind of weak looking, but it's good shit.
I feel like the Perfecto got more of a smell to. I feel like there's.
But look at them. Look at how dark they both are. Did you look at the buds?
I mean, that one is fuck already.
Yeah, I mean, like, look at that shit. Just ice. If I could wear that, as a necklace, I would. That's enough ice to put on a chain.
Why would you?
That's enough ice to put on a chain.
A nug necklace.
I mean, could you imagine if it was like a pearl necklace, and you just like it was like nugs. You just like plucked one off and just smoked it. I don't know. What you wear it like fucking garlic, like you would wear around a vampire. He's got nugs of weed hanging. I would do it. Fuck it.
This is definitely a lighter color, the dunce, than the Perfecto.
Yeah, you can tell the Perfecto was in more of a grown in a dark room.
I think I'm gonna go with the dunce.
Okay, cool. So hey, while you're getting that ready, I was thinking, like, I was gonna ask you, what do you think the highest you've ever been at a movie theater is? Do you have like a memory that you can think of, like? Because I mean, I'm always high at the movies, so are you. So I mean, I was just like, I can pinpoint a time. Can you? Okay.
Well, there's getting high, also getting high in the theater, but I mean, you shouldn't do that. No.
No.
Anyway, the highest I've been going to a movie has to be World War Z. Kenny and I were fucking blitzed. And I remember it was back when I worked at the movie theater, and we thought it was amazing. I go to work a couple days later. One of my managers is like, "Did you see World War Z?" I'm like, "Yeah, man." And he was like, "That movie was terrible." I was like, "Man, I loved it." And he was like, "What did you love about it?" And then I started thinking, and I was like, I don't remember any of this movie, just except I was high as shit, and there was fucking zombies climbing walls and shit.
He loved the experience of watching it
Brad
high.
Pitt, like, injected himself with AIDS or whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I kind of, well, first, before I get into my story, I was just going to bring up, when you worked at the movie theater, that was awesome. I remember watching Fury, and we saw Fury. We watched Fury at, like, after midnight on, like, a Wednesday, and, like, it was just, like, me and your bosses and, like, one other person, and we're, like, passing fucking blunts and bowls in the middle of the theater, like all empty and shit, just watching Fury. And that movie actually kicked ass. That was a really good movie.
Yeah, I won't mention anybody else's names because we were smoking in the theater, but that
Yeah,
was
good times.
That was one of the benefits. Yeah, like the other one is I got to see I think it was the first Hobbit movie I got to see before, like a couple days before it came out, and that was pretty cool.
But they didn't give a shit at that theater though, man. That thing was falling apart towards the end. They had like fucking caution tape up around like 2/3 of the seats and shit. So who cares if you smoke a blunt? You got a health hazard in that motherfucker.
I mean, you had to smoke blunts to work there.
So I mean, I kind of got like, I mean. So you didn't really have a horror movie as your answer, so I guess like
I mean, World War Z. You want to consider that a horror movie?
Well, World War Z, I guess so. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I was thinking.
I mean, 28.
I was thinking like
28 Days Later.
No, yeah, World War Z is definitely definitely a horror movie. I was just actually thinking of it more in the action aspect, but yeah, I would consider that horror. You're right.
There it's packed.
But so I have like a horror one though. Like I have a horror movie that I can like list like where I was the highest that I went to a theater, but then I have like just like an experience of when I was like the highest I've ever been in a movie. So like, which story do I tell? Do I tell the horror, or do I tell the non? I guess I'll just tell them both. The highest I've ever been going to a horror movie was probably, I would definitely say that it was 2017 It Chapter 1. I pre-gamed with several blunts before getting together with friends, where we pre-gamed with several blunts before we got to the theater and smoked more blunts before we went into the theater and watched the movie. And I was absolutely gone. I remember I was so high I was actually scared. Like I was like, I really hope that I remember this movie tomorrow.
I don't have the same story with it, but I back when I had Movie Pass, I saw it like 4 or 5 times, and I saw it on Halloween Eve one time, and I was the only person in the theater. It was at Chapter 1, and that I was never creeped out before watching it, but sitting in a dark theater by myself right around Halloween, that was pretty creepy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Damn, couldn't even wait till Horror History, huh?
Nah, man, we gotta try it out now. But yeah, so the highest I've ever been going to a movie in general is back when the first Expendables film came out. I remember it was like my birthday. It was the day before my birthday, and my wife took me to see it. And it was like an early morning show. It was like 11 a.m. and there was like nobody in the theater. And I was so baked. I had pre-gamed so hard as a wake and bake that morning that I was like holding on. I had to hold on to like the railing and seats as I was like walking because I was like fucking so high. I was like, I felt dizzy. And I just remember like the whole like first 40 minutes of the movie, I was trying to convince my wife to give me a hand job in the theater.
Jesus Christ.
I was like, there's nobody here. It's my fucking birthday.
It's my birthday.
Nope. You think I get the respect I deserve? Nope. No. But seriously, no. Obviously she rejected me like she should have. But yeah, that was I just remember that was a hilarious moment because, like that's just so unlike me, and I was just so like out of the moment and just enjoying myself that I was like, let's get wild. And she was like, no, I'm not getting wild.
Well, my story isn't nearly as entertaining as that with a general movie. I was going to say the next highest I got was probably when I worked at the movie theater, but it wasn't in the theater after hours. But I went by myself. I saw Interstellar. Not the best. Theater wasn't the best to watch. I mean, it was still on film. But I was just so high that and I was by myself that I just felt totally immersed in that movie. It's still like one of my favorite movie viewing experiences. I just like, dude, I don't know. It came out like super trippy just being by myself and like watching Interstellar. It was awesome.
Totally.
Well, there was no hand job stories or attempted hand jobs.
No handies. Well, can you name a movie like where you've been so baked when you watched it that you like love it, and then later you try to get somebody to watch it and they just do not share the same enthusiasm for the movie at all that you do?
Big Lebowski.
Big Lebowski, yeah, like that seemed like, well, actually, more recently, that was Psycho Gorman. I was so baked when I saw that movie, and I remember, like, I got, my wife to watch it, and then I got, you and our friend Kenny to watch it, and every time I made, someone else watch it, I made my wife watch it, I made you and Kenny watch it, I was like, are they going to enjoy it as much as I did? Because, I mean, I was ripped, and that movie's like, if you can look at that movie, is either awesome or hella corny. So I was kind of, like, in between, and luckily for me, like, all of you guys ended up loving it, so that was actually a hit. But it does happen where I'll watch a movie, and then everybody will just be, I mean, I'm too big to think of one now, but, I mean, it's not worth revisiting the heartache anyway. You hate when you try to share something you love with somebody, and they just do not care.
Nicole does not care about Big Lebowski. I've tried to persuade her over the years, and she goes, I don't get it. It just, but I do feel like that's just like, Big Lebowski is one of those movies. Either you love it or you just get it for what it is.
It's an acquired taste.
I don't know why you went Parks and Rec on me, but it's one of those movies that people just either love it or they hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely
feel like
love
that's
it.
a way with a lot of Coen Brother movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but I'm a Coen Brothers fan. I definitely am a fan. Anywho, let's get back on track, brother. We're already sparked up, so let's get on with horror history.
This week in horror history.
All right, so this week we got some good ones. We got Reanimator from 1985. An underrated classic, I think, The Dentist from 1996. Corbin Benson's great in it.
Totally.
It's a ridiculous movie. If you haven't seen it, it's just about a dentist who finds his wife having an affair, and he just takes it out on his patients.
Man, I remember as a young boy, I was like, probably like 12, 13 when I watched it. I remember seeing he's like watching his wife out the window, giving the pool dude the pool guy a BJ, and I just remember thinking, damn, this movie's going there quick.
Yeah. I'll keep moving on here though, but we got.
Oh, you're gonna make me end on that note?
I mean, fine. Corbin Benson is also amazing in the Major League movies. I love those movies.
Okay, cool.
Night of the Living Dead from 1990. 30 Days a Night from 2007. 13 Ghosts from 2001. We had The Prince of Darkness, 1987, which it'll get brought up later, but I kind of got a Prince of Darkness vibe at one point in the VHS 94. But the two we're going to look at today is The Ring, the U.S. release from 2002, and Halloween 4. I mean, it is October. So The Return of Michael Myers, 1988. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's talk about Halloween.
I mean, we had Halloween 3 just recently. We talked to Stacey Nelkin.
Yeah.
And then the box office wasn't so great on that one, so we needed to bring Michael back for part 4.
Yeah, with Mustafa Akkad behind the whole production.
He did not ever want to see the Halloween franchise end, ever.
No, he definitely did not. And I'll be the first to tell you, a lot of people love Halloween 4, and like it's a lot of people's favorite and second favorite. It's not my second favorite or my third favorite or my fourth favorite. I like it more than say 6. I like it more than Resurrection. I like it more than Rob Zombie's movies. And that's about it. I like, 1, 2, 3, H2O, 2018, and Halloween Kills. Like, I like all of those over Halloween 4, so not a favorite of mine.
I would rank Halloween 4 behind 1, 2, and 3. And then every movie that came after it until Halloween 18, I think Halloween 4 is better than.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a big, I'm not a big fan of H2O. That mask just, it takes me out of it. Like I've said before, like Halloween 6 is terrible, but the mask in Halloween 6, or I'm sorry, it's not really Halloween 6. It's just Curse of Michael Myers, but it's better than H2O, especially that digital mask.
No, I mean the digital mask sucks. But I got
so
I'm
bad.
gonna hard disagree on that, man. I hate the mask in Part 6. I fucking hate the mask in Part 6.
I
So
don't know why you hate the mask in
it's-
Part
I don't-
6. It's top 3.
I don't dig it.
I put it after 1 and 2 in terms of mask. I'd put 6.
Really? I would do 1, 2, and I would do 1, 2, and 2018.
But I almost kind of like, it's weird when I rank it because I'm like, Part 2 was still the same mask. It looks different because it wasn't taken care of. And 2018 is really also supposed to be the same mask. I mean, they are different designs, but I guess you should consider them their own mask.
Yeah, well, like the thing about Halloween 4 though that bothers me is it's the same thing as in Jason Takes Manhattan, how you get no Crystal Lake, and then in Jason Goes to Hell, you get no Jason. It's kind of like the same thing in a way with Halloween 4 because for Halloween 4 and 5, I mean, because in Halloween 4, Michael Myers passes, the whole curse on to Jamie Lloyd, and so I'm not a big fan of the whole like passing it along thing, and that happened at the end of 4, so that's one of the reasons I don't like it. And then in Halloween 5 they made him cry, and like that, like Michael Myers crying is like the greatest, besides Rob Zombie's films, it is the greatest carnal sin in the series. Just Michael Myers crying. Are you fucking kidding me? Just to turn around and later have him fucking using a knife, a real knife, mind you, to stab through a fucking laundry chute shaft to fucking to stab a little girl, but he's gonna shed a tear. It's just not a fan of crying.
Harris in danger.
Yeah,
Like, for real.
That's what I'm saying. But yeah, not a fan of the tears, and
Not a fan of Dominique Othin Gerard, or however you say his name.
no, and
You have to admit, though, of all the good things from Halloween 4, for Part 5, he just took it and threw them away.
yeah, well, I think to me the greatest, and it's like I'm not saying that I don't like other scenes of the movie, and the kills and stuff, but like my favorite thing about Halloween 4 is the opening scene, man. The opening credit scene where it's just like
It's great.
The autumn like scenery with the town and everything, and it just looks deserted. Like that opening scene just feels so Halloween to me.
Yeah, and I have to say, I did get to see Halloween 4 in theaters. I got to see 4 and 5. They did a double feature that night, and it was pretty cool. There was problems with the movie, and this guy made a joke and was like, "Oh, I don't know how the movie ends," and some woman goes, "Yeah, I don't know how it ends either." And her date goes, "You've never seen this movie?" And she was like, "No." He's like, "It came out in 1988. Like, how have you not seen this movie?" And then, sadly, I found out later he was a Rob Zombie fan. But yeah, I know.
Well,
The worst fans.
here's a knowledge nugget for you. The drugstore used in Halloween 4 was also the drugstore set used in Stephen King's The Stand miniseries directed by Mick Garris back in 1994.
I mean, that's interesting. I don't think there's any connection.
That set has stories to tell if it could talk, man.
And then let's get on over to The Ring here.
Cool.
I hadn't seen that in years. It was on my list for movies this month for the list of 31. I still like it. Every time I go to watch it, I always think I'm going to like it less. But it's a good movie. It's creepy. Like, I remember I saw it on Halloween one year. I guess 2002. And that movie creeped the shit out of me. I was like 16. Yeah. And that movie creeped me out for a while, and it's still really well done. Brian Cox is an underrated actor. That guy is great in everything I see him in.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I love Brian Cox. 100%. Yeah, he's great in everything he's in. I'm not gonna I mean, he was in Troy. I thought he was great in that. He was in X-Men 2, X-Men United.
Super Troopers?
Yeah, he's in so many movies that I just that are
Trick
good.
or Treat?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Trick or Treat. Just like and Red. There's this movie about him. Like there's these people. His dog gets killed and he kind of goes on like a John Wick thing. So it's like he's awesome.
You said Red. I was thinking of Red Eye, but his role's very small in that.
Yeah, actually, I am a fan of The Ring as well. I saw that first before I saw the Japanese Ringu. I didn't even know at the time that I hadn't really, dabbled in J horror yet, and so
Yeah, I was unaware that it was a, I guess, remake.
yeah, so I watched the 2002 one, and I definitely liked it. The whole thing with Samara coming out of the TV at the end, I think that was everybody's like holy shit moment. That's what everybody brought up when they talked about it, because you're not expecting that shit at all.
I was in theaters and I was like, okay, so like what's gonna happen? I was like,
Right.
holy shit, she came out of the fucking TV.
Yeah, and it's good, and I definitely like it, but I actually really do like I like the original Ringu more. The Japanese film from 1998, Knowledge Nugget. At the time of its release in 1998, it was the highest grossing horror film in Japanese history. But yeah, the thing about Ringu that I wasn't expecting was that it actually downplays the makeup, but the way it's done, the atmospheric horror of it actually makes it scary. Like, how in the 2002 one, like when they find the girl from the beginning of the film in the closet and her jaw's all like hanging and she's all like decrepit looking, like they don't look like that in the Ringu movie. Like they just look like normal. But it's like it's the way it's done and it's the camera angles that just like creep you out. And I actually remembered, like, that's what I took away from it, is like they actually did more with less. So that was really impressive to me. And so like I'm not taking anything away from the 2002 when they did a great job. It had a great cast, great production quality, but the original like Japanese movie actually really got under my skin. Hideo Nakata fucking directed the shit out of that movie, and like definitely like it's just one of those ones that you wouldn't expect it to be better, because it was like all the effects and stuff in the 2002 one, but the creepiness of it surpasses. I think visually 2002 wins. Let me put it that way. The visual, like the way it's like the cinematography of that movie is beautiful. It's not like that in Ringu, but Ringu is definitely like creepier, and it's just crazy how it's creepier because it's just, like I said, more with less.
Yeah, The Ring is a very visually beautiful movie. I like that it's just always kind of rainy and dark,
and
there's
blue.
just that like overtone of just like depression over all
right,
this.
and it's very artsy. It's very artsy, but at the same time, it's like not like beating you over the head with it.
And okay, look, I got to ask a question here. Nicole and I had this discussion after we watched it. She couldn't give me an answer. So at the end of the movie, Rachel has her son make a copy of the tape. They figure out that's how you stop from dying.
Yeah.
My question is, does it always have to be a VHS tape? Could somebody upgrade it? Like I said, eventually could they upgrade it to 4K? Is that okay if you put it on a Blu-ray? Is the rule that it has like? I think
Samara might show up at your house like ready to fuck you up, and then when she like. You probably do to break down the technology to her, and then she'd be like, oh, so you still pass my story along? All right, I'll leave you alone.
Okay, because like my question was like, I mean, like, is it just directly a copy? Like, could Netflix throw this shit out on like streaming?
Yeah, I think it's more about getting her story. I think it was more about getting her story out there. So I think that if it evolved,
could I buy it on Vudu and I'd be good?
Yeah, I think that would. Yeah, I mean, but I want to know who the evil, sadistic motherfucker would be that would upload it to. That dude is trying to get out of like. That is brilliant. That is a brilliant way to get out of Samara ever coming after you. Just like straight up, just put it on Vudu, and you're good. Like right? You're good. Put it on YouTube. You're good.
Yeah. Yeah, Nicole couldn't give me an answer. I didn't know if it had to be linked to the technology, if it still had to just be a VHS tape.
Well, if she wants her story to go on and on and on, she's going to have to move along with the times like everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, because it looks like maybe when she died, there wasn't VHS tapes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, or like they were like probably like brand new, like it was a new thing. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's the white that they used was just really weird. I don't think I've really seen that in any other movie.
It's kind of like washed out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like I said, the coloring and everything. I always think of the scene when they're on the boat with the horse and like those blues. Yeah, it's so beautiful.
And then that horse just fucking snaps.
I know, dude. It's that movie is it's funny because it's one of those ones like The Sixth Sense where it's so good, but it's one that like I rarely get to because it's so good that I'm kind of like I almost want to preserve it. But at the same time, you're
Yeah.
like it just doesn't come around often, and you're kind of like it's so good. I remember it so well. I kind of feel like I don't need to rewatch it. You know what I mean? It's one of those ones, but like I actually probably really do need to rewatch it.
Yeah, it had been several years since I've seen. I'd probably say at least 5 or 6 years since I saw it, and it holds up. I always have like these handful of movies that I'll go back to watch, and I'll be like it'll be a long time in between watch them, and I think before I watch them, like, do I remember liking this more than I did? And then I'll watch and I'll be like, no, that movie's great.
Yep, that happens absolutely, ain't a question about it.
Well, I think now it's time to get on to Puff Puff Ass, the segment of our show where Drew and I answer questions you send us through Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at High on Horror 420 and through email at highonhorror420@gmail.com.
Yo, man. Puff, puff, pass.
All right, I'll start us off here with a question from a listener named Floyd from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Ann Arbor. Ugh. Go Buckeyes. OH. I'm not going to get an answer, but if Kenny was here, he would have said IO.
Yeah, again, I don't do the sports thing. So yeah, Floyd here, he asked an interesting question. It's actually something that's kind of funny to me, so I wanted to bring it up. He says, "Hey guys, love the podcast. Wondering, have you guys ever played with a Ouija board or dabbled in the occult?" That's a good question because it's not about horror movies, but it's still horror related, so I'm going to go with it. My answer, I have never in my life touched a Ouija board with my hands. I have never. I've been terrified of them since I've seen The Exorcist, and before them, I had no idea. Before watching The Exorcist, I had no idea what the hell they were and had no interest in them. After I found out what a Ouija board was, I wasn't going near that fucking thing. I even remember I was at my friend's house one time, and my friend's sister, had a birthday party, and one of the gifts that she was gifted was a Ouija board, a brand new Ouija board. And I remember he waited until she was outside with her friends doing something. I don't know what the hell was going on, like they were playing a game or pinata or something. But actually, he took the time while she wasn't around to take the Ouija board that she was gifted and go drop it behind the washer and dryer in the basement so she could never find it because he didn't want her fucking with it. So yeah, no, I don't do the Ouija board, and I don't do the cult. I don't dabble in the occult.
Like, that's kind of vague, the occult. Like, you talk about, like, sacrificing goats to, like, Baphomet and shit.
I don't know, or maybe
I'm
reading
probably
like
getting that wrong as who you're supposed to sacrifice to, but you
maybe
get the
like
point.
I was thinking maybe like reading the Satanic Bible, or like even like doing,
Necronomicon.
even being like, I mean, does it even being psychic kind of counts as like dabbling in the occult in a way? So I mean,
Miss Cleo, call me now.
yeah, no, I don't really dabble in the occult. I'm not a witch or anything like that, or a Wiccan. I don't have anything. Look, be whatever
I'm a
religion you
dick
want to be.
warlock, though.
Be whatever religion you want to be. If you want to be a witch, a Wiccan, a Christian, an atheist, a nihilist like me, if you want to be, believe in whatever you want to believe in. I'm not judging anybody, but no, I don't dabble in the occult whatsoever. I don't practice anything. I wouldn't practice anything. Let me put it this way. I forget who once said this, but I'm gonna use it. As far as like the supernatural and the devil and all that shit goes, I don't believe in it, but I respect it enough not to fuck with it. That's my final answer.
I had to bring up a Dick Warlock reference, so I always bring them up whenever I can.
I just thought you were over there talking about Dick.
No, I was talking about the legend Dick Warlock.
Greatest name in history.
I mean, yeah, second best first best Michael Myers name. At least he got the best on that. Anyway, I have not messed with a Ouija board. My mom, very Christian conservative, so she was always warning me about all kinds of stuff with Ouija boards. Now, I don't know why I would use one. I would be the guy there the whole time. This is ridiculous. Why are we doing this? I don't have any problems with them.
But so here's the thing. Okay, so you're not scared of it at all. You're less scared of it than me because, well, maybe not less scared of it, but you don't even have the respect for it that I do.
No.
So
That's why I would if it ended
if it
up
ever
being
came
real.
up, would you do it? Like, is it possible if like you're over like you're one of some of your friends' house and y'all are smoking and a Ouija board pops out, like you do it?
I mean, sure.
Oh shit.
We could do it on the
If
show.
you ever do that, let me know because you ain't coming back in my house.
I'd be like
bringing
Jonah
that-
Hill
bringing
in
some
This
shit
Is
in
the
with
End.
you that
The
I don't
power of
need.
Christ compels you. Oh, does it really? Something really chill happened last night.
Did you ever read anything like the Satanic Bible though, or like the Necronomicon?
No, I don't really have an interest.
I've read both. Like again, I wouldn't consider that dabbling, but I went through like a big Marilyn Manson kick in like the mid '90s.
I never
like
got into Marilyn Manson.
I still like his music, man. But yeah, yeah, I went through a kind of a Marilyn Manson thing. So that was I got. People that was the type of shit that went around in the circle of Manson fans back then, and that's conservative compared to like some of the shit that went around in Manson circles. But yeah, no. So you haven't even read like you've never even like so much as read a book. That's pretty cool. Like, so you haven't dabbled either then.
No, I don't really have an interest to. I mean,
Agreed.
but if somebody wants to do a Ouija board, sure, I'll do it, but I'll complain the whole time probably.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna put it this way. Look,
I would see if the stuff was real, it would come after me first because I'd fuck around and have no respect for it. So if it turned out to somehow be real, I'd be the first one to go.
No, that's just it. That's the common misconception is like people always say, like, oh, I'm the asshole, so I'm gonna be the one that gets like possessed or whatever. But it's actually the opposite because like they go for the pure of heart. Normally, like so.
You saying I ain't pure of heart?
No, you'd probably be the first to die, but you wouldn't be the first possessed. You'd be the first victim in a horror movie for sure.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, yeah, no, I don't mess with that stuff. What's your question? You got a question from somebody over there?
Yeah. Thank you for writing this so I could talk about it some more. But Cam from
God.
Seat Pleasant, Maryland. I did not know that's a real place. You ever heard of Seat Pleasant, Maryland, Drew?
Sea Pleasant? Nope.
I mean,
And that's just one state over. I've never heard of that.
our bad Cam, we just shit it all over your city. He said, why do I hate Rob Zombie's Halloween so much?
Uh-oh.
And have I ever seen any other Rob Zombie movies? So I'll answer the second question first. Because I hate Rob Zombie's Halloween so first, I've decided to ban myself from watching any Rob Zombie movies. Now, I told Drew if Rob Zombie ever came on our podcast, which is never ever going to probably happen, I will watch his other movies and give them a fair shake. But Rob Zombie's Halloween, I don't like it because it's not Halloween. And then some of his criticisms of Carpenter, such as, how did Michael drive a car 160 miles overnight? That's ridiculous. Oh, but my Michael can walk 160 miles overnight. Not only that, he looks like a bodybuilder and he's 7 feet tall.
And he survives getting shot in the face, like point blank.
I will give Rob Zombie credit on that. I hate to say it because apparently he did not want to do a sequel. So that was them killing Michael off there. But have you ever heard his explanation? He goes, I don't know. Maybe Laurie's like a bad shot or something. That's like literally what he said to like recant it. But he didn't work hard on that.
Look, you're missing out by not watching at least some of his other works. I'm not going to say everything. I mean, there's still some shit besides Halloween that's just kind of out there, like the Lords of Salem and stuff. But Rob Zombie's that type of guy. He said actually in an interview that I watched that they asked him what his method is, like when he's writing a movie or coming up with music, like what he does, and he said that his
Just
thing
find
is,
a bunch of hillbillies.
he said that he just like wakes up at 4 a.m, turns on the pot of coffee, and then just sits down and thinks like, what can I come up with today? And I think that pretty much explains the fucking lack of a good backstory for Halloween. That is exactly how that seems to me, is just, what would make somebody a killer? Oh, I know. Being bullied. It's like, yeah, that's everybody. That's not pure evil. Michael Myers is supposed to be pure evil. You made Michael Myers an emo kid who turned psycho. Like that's not the backstory Michael needed. Everybody always is always like, oh, but I like that it had a backstory. Okay, it had a backstory, but was it a good backstory? No, it was white trash bullshit. It was not Halloween. Had that movie been called, like The Life and Death of Mark Tripp. I don't know who Mark Tripp is. Just say whoever. The killer's name is Mark Tripp, for fuck's sake. And it's the same story. I probably would have been like, yeah, that movie's not bad. Like, like that shows you how a dude becomes a killer. But that's not what I want to see out of Michael Myers or Halloween.
And can we please talk about how ridiculous the kid looked in the Michael mask, chasing Judith in the hallway?
It was all big on his head. Yeah, it's fucking huge.
Michael mask.
Yeah, it was fucking
like
huge.
He's just a little body. That's not scaring anybody. It's just comical. Like,
yeah, but back to what I was saying real quick. You are missing out, and you did have another stipulation besides Rob Zombie joining our show one day, being the reason why you would watch his other movies. You are committed to me, dude. You said that if you ever watch House of a Thousand Corpses or The Devil's Rejects, that it has to be with me. So don't try to renege on that now. That's definitely happening because I don't know. One day you might cave, but either way, don't forget about me.
The only way I'm caving is if Rob Zombie's on our podcast. I pretty much laid this out. Like,
I mean, it would.
I've taken a principled stand.
I wouldn't mind having him on the podcast to talk about him about other things, but at this point, I feel like I would be a peer mediator if he was on our show. So I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and say.
I don't think if he ever listened to our show, if he ever listened to our show and listened to me, he would ever want to be on our show.
No, and you know what? He doesn't give a shit about what we're saying anyway. He literally says, like his opinion is his opinion. And, if you don't like it, like, fuck you. And I appreciate that, we don't have to like his movie. He doesn't have to like what we say, and that's facts. But, he was a talented filmmaker at a point.
Go back to Halloween. Another bone I want to pick. People complain about emotional Michael in part 5. What about this Michael? He's literally trying to build a family. With his former sister.
Yeah, that's true.
They're gonna live in the attic or some shit.
I mean, weird. The thing about Rob Zombie's movies that can be such a letdown, and Halloween for me is a good example. Is that
he made Halloween into a music video?
He gets good casts, man. He had Brad Dourif in there, Sheriff Brackett. He had
I can't say anything bad about
Brad.
Yeah,
dude, Dee Wallace. Ken Forey, and Tyler Mane plays Michael. He's got a lot of good actors in there, and it's just when you have all those things usually come together to make something special, and it just didn't. I don't know. I just feel that Rob Zombie tried to put too much of his own flavor on Halloween.
And can we talk about Love Hurts? Oh man, like I've said, I went in already thinking it. I already told myself it's not going to be John Carpenter's Halloween. And I was let down even more. And I went with my sister. And we're watching it. And his mom's stripping. And it cuts to him sitting on the porch all like fucking Butters in South Park. And just like
Butters in South Park.
Just all pouting. And you just hear Love Hurts. And me and my sister both looked at each other and went, Love Hurts in a Halloween movie?
Yeah, and that actually, it's funny because that stood out to me as well. When that happened, it was like, I didn't literally do it, but in my mind it was a facepalm moment. I'm like, why are we being made to feel bad for him right now? Like, why? I don't want to feel bad for Michael Myers. I want to be scared of him. And and
he ruined Loomis.
But the thing is, like I said, that affected me as well. I mentally facepalmed when I saw that scene. And my buddy who I was with, who I was seeing the movie with, at that point literally told me after the movie, he said, yeah, as soon as Love Hurts came on, I just started like picking the paint off the theater wall that was like next to my seat. I didn't even watch the movie. So yeah, that broke the connection with a lot of people. Love Hurts does not belong in a Halloween movie.
And as I just snuck in there, he ruined Loomis.
It was more in the sequel that he ruined him, but the first one was I didn't care for him in the first one, but in the sequel he was just a fucking dickhead.
Oh dude, it's so bad. And then like all of a sudden he has a change of heart.
Yeah, right.
And have you ever heard of why the white horse is in there?
Okay, so here's my answer for that.
No, I'm just saying, for the movie, just why it was put in there.
Well, this is my answer. There are movies like Hereditary, and the Babadook that I will like that are ambiguous that I'll kind of like look up online afterwards because I'm like I want to know more about it. I didn't know everything, but I want to know about this, so I'll look it up to kind of what's this person's interpretation or what's that person's interpretation. And then there are those movies that are just boring as fuck and I can't stand them and I don't even care what the explanation is because it's not going to change my mind because I was still bored. And that's how I felt about The White Horse. Like it's been years and honest to God, I don't give a shit what the answer is. Like it's not going to make me like the movie.
No, I'm just saying, do you know the reason it inspired him to put it in the movie?
No.
He said that he saw a white horse on a trip, thought it looked cool. He wanted to put it in the movie. And he added it to the movie when they were pretty much done. Like, inserted a huge plot point as the movie's wrapping.
Jeez.
Yeah. So that concludes
Jeez,
why I dislike Rob Zombie, the short version of why I dislike Rob Zombie's movies.
Well, yeah. So are you done ranting? Do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'm done ranting.
All right. Well, for those of you listening out there, don't forget to write in your questions to us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter at highonhorror420 or email us at highonhorror420@gmail.com. Write us. We love hearing from you. We've been getting some great mail lately. The questions are really cool. We love that people actually take time to send us messages, man. Thank you all. Let's get into our review / discussion of this week's film now, VHS 94.
VHS 94 is out now and available on Shudder, and we just recently got some information from Shudder that it's their best movie debut to date. And VHS 94 follows a police SWAT team investigating a mysterious VHS tape and discovers a sinister cult that has pre-recorded material which uncovers a nightmarish conspiracy. And it was broken into 5 segments, really, including the wraparound. But the first one we got into was Storm Drain. And that followed a reporter and her cameraman who were investigating claims of a rat man in the sewers. Drew, what do you think of that one?
Well, first of all, that Veggie Masher commercial directed by Steven Kostansky, there we go. That commercial was fucking hilarious. It reminded me of Slap Chop. Yeah, the fact that like the vegetables just were not getting chopped up at all. It was so terribly done. It was just so like it was hilarious. But I thought
that was a commercial that was just inserted after one of the shorts.
Yeah, correct. It was just a little commercial thrown in by Steven Kostansky, the man behind the Void and Leprechaun Returns and Psycho Gorman. He's a very talented young filmmaker.
Good movies.
Yeah. But no. Storm Drain was. I thought Storm Drain was awesome. I thought that the creature in it looks awesome. It was very creepy. I'll definitely say that. It was definitely creepy. The ending of it, I think the ending of that one left a little bit more to be desired for me, but I think that was a strong effort from Chloe Okuno. I'm a fan. What did you think of it?
I liked it. It was one of my favorites. That and The Subject were probably my 2 favorites.
The Subject's definitely my favorite. Yeah, absolutely. But before we get to that, let's get to the second story. Let's talk about the second one.
Yeah, the second one's Empty Wake, and it's a funeral home, and a young woman named Haley is assigned to host a wake for a man named Andrew Edwards. And her boss, Ronald, and another assistant Tim, leave the building for the night, explaining they're on a call away if she needs any help. And nobody shows up to this wake, and she keeps hearing knocking from the box. I have to say, when I first watched this, I was like, this is moving really slow. And then it picked up, and I became a fan of it. I really enjoyed the second part of that.
Yeah, it was creepy as hell. It did drag on a little bit, but that was all to build suspense because the whole time you're just like, I
It
know
paid off.
something's gonna happen. I know something's gonna happen, and it definitely does. It's definitely like that to me is like that to me is like the definition of a short film. It's one person in a room with chairs. And when you can pull off a story like that, where it's just like literally one person in a room with a coffin and chairs, and like you can still pull off a story with just that. It's pretty crazy, that's the definition of short filmmaking for me, to see somebody have one room and one person and they just make it work, and all the person's doing is answering phone calls and being scared, and because there's a thunderstorm outside and the power goes out. It's it carries a lot of dread with it. It's very suspenseful.
Yeah, and yeah, like I said, it was very slow in the beginning, but it does pay off.
100%.
And that's
And not
what
in the
I
way you'd
enjoyed.
expect it to.
No. And I guess there's not really much more you can. There's not much you can really say about Empty Week without giving spoilers, I think.
Right. But Simon Barrett from Your Next Fame, and who did Seance, that's on Shudder right now, he did it, and he's also very talented. So
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so it's great seeing, it's not a surprise that his effort, stands out.
And then here, the third one, The Subject, that was both of our favorites. Timo, the writer and director of it, did a great job. There's a Dr. James Suhendra. Am I saying that right? What do you think? That sounds about right.
Sahendra, yeah.
Sahendra. He wants to make cyborg people, basically. And I have to say, one of the designs, tell me I'm wrong, looks like Evil Johnny 5.
100%. Yeah, man, definitely.
There's a lot of interesting designs, but yeah, one of them definitely, if you remember Short Circuit, the top of it looks like an Evil Johnny 5.
I mean,
He looks angry as hell.
Yeah, this segment here by Timo is I mean, it's like The Raid. If anybody out there listening has watched The Raid 1 or 2, the Indonesian martial arts movies, like this movie is literally those movies fused with Frankenstein's army. It's absolutely batshit. Like, I would use the term batshit crazy to explain this segment, but not in a bad way. I actually had said a moment ago that this is my favorite segment. I take that back. It's not my favorite segment. It is definitely my second favorite segment. But yeah, it's super strong, and like I said, it's batshit crazy, and the pace as well, and it just gets really crazy at the end.
For sure, and poor Jonah is all I'll say.
I love Frankenstein stories though, and whenever you can incorporate one that still kind of like takes you aback and shows you something you're not expecting and that pleases you, especially when it's a short, you know what I mean? Like on a limited budget, it's kind of impressive. Like, that's the thing about short films. Like, a lot of people are able to pull off some things, and it's like, if you can pull that off with that budget, like, why aren't you out there making the blockbusters with the millions of dollars? Like, if you can stretch $1 like that, I mean, I think that shows a lot.
And I was going to say, like, part of it felt almost like a first-person shooter, like first-person mode from, like, a video game.
A video game. Yeah, I was just going to say, it had, like, a total video game vibe to it.
I mean, I guess you can cyborgs kind of fit in pretty easily with that. Getting on to our fourth short here. It's about an extremist religious group known as the First Patriots Movement Militia, and they're plotting to blow up a government building and take back America. This one, it's more if you're trying to figure out what's going on with some stuff. I'm trying not to give anything away.
Yeah, like, it's almost like you think you know what's going on, but
the whole time, I felt like the whole time you're trying to figure out like what's not adding up, and then you get the explanation. You go, why didn't I figure that out myself?
Yeah, definitely.
But that one, at first, it's funny. Like I like all the segments, and this one kind of Empty Wake. The Empty Wake. I didn't think I was going to like it at first, and then the second part got me and hooked me, and I thought it was really well done. I would say it has funnier moments than any of the other segments.
I think that the one thing that segment that Terror achieved, as I think that looked the most authentic out of all the stories. I think the way that everybody was dressed and everything, I think that like the clothing, the scenery, the way everything was just done, the trucks and everything that was used, I felt that looked the most like, out of all the stories, that looks like something I would be watching, that you would watch on VHS, like just the quality of it and the way they looked. So I will say, like, the way that they pulled off the aging of just the way that just the cinematography and the casting and the costume designer and all that stuff that came together to make that movie look like that. Just, you know, that segment just looks so it looks so authentic to being in the 90s. It's just crazy. Like, it really does.
Yeah, and then well, of course, I guess I should have said this was my favorite, but I don't know. The wraparound I never really include in the shorts. I think of like each of the kind of self-contained stories, but we have the wraparound Holy Hell. And it follows the SWAT team as they kind of go to these different rooms.
Yeah,
and
this interweaves in between the other segments of the story.
And I did not. I want to talk about it, but we can't for spoiler reasons. But the epilogue of Holy Hell, I thought was really well done.
Holy Hell. It's kind of hard because when you're thinking of, so that's why I got tripped up earlier when I was talking about the subject, and I said it was my favorite segment, because you almost forget that like wraparounds are a segment in and of themselves. It's almost as if like, oh, like, you know, you kind of
they're a segment that gets split up four times.
Yes, you kind of don't consider that a full segment. You're kind of just like, oh, that's just like the almost like the in between. But when you consider it as a full segment, Holy Hell is definitely my favorite. It's hard to pull off a wraparound story, and like, you know, I immediately was like, we need to reach out to Jennifer. Like, I was watching the credits of the film and I was like, that's like, we need to talk to her, because that was fucking crazy. Like, what I liked about it was that it's just kind of cold and heartless. There's no like remorse to it. It's just kind of like, this is what it is. Fuck you. It's very kind of punk rock, and I appreciate the shit out of it. I really liked it, and it's twisted to boot, man. It's very like, it's very twisted.
And I feel like compared to the other VHS ones, this one did have more of a narrative and was more of, and it worked more with the other shorts.
It worked. It worked with them. That's a good way of putting it.
I feel like in the original VHS, the whole story with the house just didn't.
It's just somebody sitting in a room.
Excuse to move it to the next VHS tape.
It's just somebody sitting in a room watching different tapes, and in between you're like seeing stuff in the background happen. Whereas this actually, like you said, had a narrative.
And it definitely it takes a trope and twist it at the end.
Yeah,
it's about best I can say without giving anything away.
All I can say is that if you're a fan of Videodrome,
yes,
and even Evil Dead Trap, no, that is not an Evil Dead sequel. Evil Dead Trap is very much like Videodrome. If you like either of those, then I think you will very much, odds are you will like Holy Hell. It's right up that, you know, it's very surreal, but at the same time it's very real, and it's very it's definitely, it's just kind of, like I said, it's punk rock, and it's just in your face, and it is what it is. It's remorseless, and it's a very cold way to end the movie. Let me put it that way. The way that it's a very cold way to end it. Like, the movie goes out on a note where you're just like, well, okay, damn.
Yeah. I guess that's it.
And it was, what a strong outing. Seriously, like that definitely, the wraparound story usually is kind of the filler story, whereas I feel like the wraparound story completed this movie.
Yes,
you feel me?
And yes, very much Videodrome. But I mean, who doesn't like Cronenberg, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. But all right, so before we talk to Jennifer, what would you rate VHS 94 out of 10?
I'd probably give it a solid 7.
Solid 7. I'm gonna go. I think I would do a 7.75. I think I'm right there on the 8 border. I think that some stories are stronger than others, and that's what stops it from obviously being higher. But as a collaborative effort and as a whole effort, it's everybody did a good job. I like all of them. There's nothing. I didn't dislike a single story. You know, there's like what I take away from VHS 94 is that I hope that some of these people, like, you know, our guest today, Jennifer Reeder, or
Timo.
Yeah, I hope people like this, get like their foot in the door to actually like do some real shit and get some trust with some companies. Get some like I hope that they get some spotlight on them and that they even maybe come back for another VHS film and do segments again. I really hope that the hard work that the people put into this movie pays off and that they get some recognition because they all goddamn deserve it.
For sure. Yeah, I don't know. There's really much else I can say. Although I will say I did like the VHS aesthetic. It looked pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. So you know what? Let's talk more about Holy Hell with our guest Jennifer Reeder. Today's guest is a filmmaker, screenwriter, and an artist. She's known for her critically acclaimed short film, A Million Miles Away, as well as the feature film, Knives and Skin, which you can catch on Hulu. Most recently, she did the wraparound story Holy Hell in VHS 94, which is streaming now on Shudder. John and I were just informed by the folks at Shudder that VHS 94 is actually an absolute blockbuster and is Shudder's #1 premiere to date. Everyone's watching it. Welcome, Jennifer Reeder. Thank you for being on High on Horror.
Thanks to you two both. It's really nice to be here.
How are things going with you?
Yeah, things are good. It was quite a surprise to get the news today that the VHS 94 was like the kind of most popular Shudder premiere or something like that. I'm getting the words wrong, but yeah, that was pretty cool. And I think just a week ago, or maybe even less than a week ago, it was a New York Times critics pick and is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, which is just seems kind of crazy to me. I mean, not because of the film itself, but because I'm sort of I feel like I'm more used to making films that fly a little more under the radar, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for the movie to be so new and all this is just coming out, I'm sure that it's overwhelmingly positive for you. I'm sure.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I mean, it's a project. I mean, I've never been involved in an anthology before. And so, there's some hesitation going into, putting sort of like my name onto a project where there's, like you might be beholden to, to how popular the other sections are. I actually feel like the other sections are really strong. And I think that, the wraparound has been notoriously hard. Going into the wraparound, other wraparound directors were like, yeah, good luck. Nobody ever likes the wraparound. And I think that, the reviews have showed that the reviews have been really polarizing around the wraparound. But I think that, the other sections are so cool. And I love the VHS super fans, who've just been waiting for, the kind of next installment. And so, the love that it's getting right now is just so cool. I'll take it all.
All right. Well, look, you're on High on Horror, so I have to ask you, do you smoke? Are you a smoker?
I am not on a regular basis.
Okay. How often do you smoke?
I would say, like as a female, I would say it's a monthly thing around some things that happen consistently on a monthly basis.
And what is your favorite way? Do you like edibles?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, edibles is my thing.
All right. And okay, so before we get into your movies, I want to talk about you actually are a teacher. You teach in the School of Art and Art History at the University of Illinois, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I've actually been at UIC for quite a long time now. I mean, it was not something that when I was younger, I thought I would want to be like a university professor, but I was a teaching assistant when I was getting my master's degree here in Chicago at the School of the Art Institute. And, even sort of like way back then, I really understood how important mentors were to young filmmakers, and especially, young female filmmakers or young filmmakers of color, in particular, when I was in film school. And I kind of went to film school in an art school context, so I never was in a really proper film school environment. But when I was looking around as a young film student, there were not a lot of women, like not a lot of American women in indie film, let alone like American women doing genre. I mean, we all knew about Mary Shelley, and Frankenstein, but that's not, I mean, I could align myself with like mentors in terms of a kind of, women in genre, in literature, but, there was nobody, I didn't have any, female film professors, both, or at least as an undergrad. So, I mean, part of what I feel like makes me a better filmmaker and certainly fulfills me as like a human on this earth is education and mentoring. And it also keeps me fresh. If I'm teaching a screenwriting class, I never just use I never like recycle the exact same syllabus. I always think like, okay, what's like, an older film that I haven't screened before that I need to revisit, that I need to think about, or what are like brand new films that have just come out that I really want to, talk about in terms of, in screenwriting. And even, where I teach at UIC, it's a really, really diverse undergrad population. And so sometimes, I kind of throw the syllabus out when I meet my class, and I'm just like, oh, wow, there's, this is a really different kind of group of students than I thought I would have. And I try to be real nimble in terms of what we want to talk about. But it makes me a better filmmaker because I'm always, because of my teaching, I have to watch a lot of films and kind of stay up on those conversations. And I love having the conversations with students, some of whom I'll show something and they're like, that was garbage. I mean, I make them be more articulate than just saying that was garbage. But I want to know what, young filmmakers think. And I want to know what their influences are. And I want to know, how the other, how like, GIFs or TikTok or any of the other kind of like teeny tiny, ways that that young people are experiencing like moving image, how that's influencing, what they're writing or what the films are that they want to make.
But that's awesome. But I gotta say, you sound hella busy.
It keeps me out of jail. I mean, I gotta stay busy, or it would be too easy for me to get myself in trouble. Like what is it? Like the devil will always find something for idle hands to do. So I keep my hands busy.
Yeah. It's like idle hands will do the devil's work or
That's
something
right.
like that.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So I gotta ask you, what made you want to get into filmmaking? What was your inspiration?
So I actually, I came to undergrad. I mean, I was always somebody. My mom is a film lover, and so I always had there was always somebody with a camera in my household. Like a Super 8 camera, or when like prosumer video cameras became available. I mean, those were for home movies, but it was still the case that somehow I had a family who was really interested in recording at least our family events. And so having a camera in our home in general was maybe a different kind of experience. But then when I was a freshman in college, I took a sculpture class because I thought, oh yeah, well, the art department, that's where I'm going to kind of find my misfits. And it turns out I'm a terrible sculptor. But the instructor was like, I was actually a ballet dancer for a long time, like from a young age up actually through college. And so my sculpture instructor was like, I know that you have this dance background, and there's a class that's being offered next semester that's a kind of a performance art class. That might be something better for you than sculpture. And so really on a whim, I took that class, and it was not really a performance art class. It was kind of a video art class. And so, I picked up the little prosumer, high-8 camera that my mom and dad were using just to sort of document graduations and birthday parties, and started, making videotapes. And it was like I had recovered a phantom limb. I mean, honestly, that sounds so like bold and romantic, but it really, it felt like, this is the camera in that moment felt like a real extension of like my, my mind's eye and sort of my, my heart. And I still very much think that my history as a dancer is helps me in like, blocking actors for a scene, or the way that I use music and edit to the rhythms of a song that's maybe part of the score or something like that. And that was, I was a kid. I was like 17 or 18 years old. And I hope this filmmaking thing works out, because I can't do many other things, So I never looked back after I picked up that camera for the first time.
Well, yeah, that's so you had an immediate connection. That's awesome. Like you can pinpoint when you picked up the camera and when you were like, this is what I want to do.
Oh,
That's pretty cool.
absolutely. Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, I also very coincidentally, it was like two things colliding at the same time. I got a job at I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, it's a big kind of sprawling metropolis, but it's also kind of a college town, so I grew up right on the edge of campus, lots of, like, head shops and, a weird artsy movie theater, record stores. I mean, I was able to access kind of counterculture pretty easily as a teenager. And I started working at the end of my senior year of high school at this movie theater that was like the art house movie theater, that showed all sorts of really cool stuff. They also had like a 24-hour horror marathon, a 24-hour sci-fi marathon. And so I was working at this movie theater sort of at the same time that I, picked up this camera, and all of a sudden I was both, the sort of maker of movies, but also just surrounded by movies that were also, not, it wasn't a big Cineplex. They were movies that were being made, kind of on the fringe, which really, which really spoke to me so much. And so, yeah, it was like those two things became deeply, influential. But it was absolutely, coincidental. It was like, lightning strikes once.
Yeah, it was just meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, you write too. You've written a lot of screenplays, and so like, see, my thing is, I always wanted to direct a movie. I've been I'm a cinephile since I was a kid. I've always wanted to direct a movie, but I'm not a people person. I just don't like people, and to me, like, directing is being in front of people and being around people, and I don't want to do that. So I like writing because I can just kind of be alone and in my own headspace. So I guess you answered my question with how much you love directing. I guess you like that more, but like, how much, like, what's your love of writing? What's your passion for writing?
Well, I think I started writing, and I would also say that, kind of in the way that I sort of taught myself how to shoot and edit. I taught myself how to write, and I taught myself how to direct. My origins as a filmmaker are really in the art world, so I spent a lot of time making much more kind of abstract work that lived in galleries and museums, and I had a lot of success early on in that world, but it was never satisfying. It tends to be kind of elitist and sort of closed off, and it doesn't really embrace, stories. So when I pivoted away from the art world to make narrative films, it was really up to me to figure out, who I wanted to be as a screenwriter, who I wanted to be as a filmmaker. And again, because I didn't have mentors as a film student, I just started, thinking about, like, well, what is the film that I would have wanted to see as a teenager, or what is the film that I want to see now? Like, what is out there or what is in me that's not out there, And
Right.
and so yeah, I just started, kind of in a John Cassavetes sort of way, began, kind of doing some improv exercises with friends of mine who were also not actors, but were real characters, people who were like the class clown, someone who's like, yeah, I'll tell you a story, and I was like, okay, I want you to take that character and I'm going to put you in a scenario with this other person who likes to tell a story, and we're gonna shoot it a bunch of times and work it out, and then maybe write it down and then shoot it again. And and um and that's sort of how I started. And that felt like such a good process. I really wanted then to be able to truly author my films, so I was writing them, I was directing them, I was sometimes I was in them, I was in front of the camera sometimes, but I did the art direction, I was cutting my own films, I was doing all the sound design, I was like my own little sweatshop. I mean, I'm happy not to be, not to be my own little sweatshop anymore, but it feels really good to, at the end of the day, even with something like Knives and Skin, which is a kind of a long film, even for a feature, that feels at the end of the day kind of like handcrafted, from my heart and my mind. And I hear what you say about directing. I mean, I'm actually I'm an introvert. I'm not someone who loves crowds or loves being around a lot of people, but my directing is not really like that. For me, directing is like, I actually am just with the actors, or I have smaller conversations with my director of photography, or it's like one-on-one conversations. It's never me with a huge group of people. Even when I've worked on films where we have like 100 extras. I mean, I passed the bullhorn. Like the first time I had to do that, somebody passed me a bullhorn and was like, okay, like literally, or like a megaphone or whatever, right? And said, here's how you to direct the extras. I was like, nope, the first AD or the second AD can do that. Like, I'm not going to take on directing 100 extras, and that was my prerogative at that
Right.
point. I was like, I'm going to talk to these 4 people. And it's not like, I don't want to come across as like a diva who's like, I shall not talk to the extras, but I was also like, I can't, I guarantee you that they don't need my direction. The first or second AD can absolutely, handle that job. I really like the intimacy of directing and talking one-on-one to actors about their characters and their scenes. And that was the same case even with VHS. I mean, I was like, it was a group of, seven people maybe. I mean, it wasn't a huge group, but I still had really, smaller conversations, with all of them about their roles.
Well, so like, don't you find as a writer and director that there is a trade-off in a sense of like, you'll write something and then when you're going to like film it, or as you're filming it, you realize, oh, we can't do this, or you do it and then it doesn't make it into the movie. Isn't there like a trade-off of like, you're, damn, like I love writing, but this didn't make it in, or I love the movie, but I wish I could have made this scene. It's kind of like it's like, like what you were saying about, you wrote your own narrative. You have to love what you're writing in order to love what you're directing. But I'm sure there's a trade-off with that as well.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I think it's like you conceive of one film and then you write another film and then you like direct another film, and then in post-production it becomes another film. I mean, and you have to be like, you have to let some things go and be really a different kind of nimble, to say, oh, because I always go into production with the script thinking like, wow, this is perfect. I'm not being bold right now, or like, but this is a perfect script. Everything is exactly where it should be. And then, I get on set and I'm shooting it and I'm like, oh my God, like that line did not work at all. Or like, why are we shooting? Why did this thing happen before this other thing? Like, so many things like reveal themselves on set, and then the whole thing gets kind of turned upside down again, even in post production, where I think again, like, wow, yeah, we should just cut out that line. I don't even know why I wrote it. Why did we record it? And I mean, that's how I work. Maybe there's other directors who are like, the way that I conceived it was exactly how I wrote it, which is exactly how we directed it, which is exactly how it is. But I don't think that's very much fun, and I don't think that that's really leaning into the curiosity of what any storyteller should do. I stay really nimble and I stay true to, I mean, at some point it's like the film tells me what it should be. And I don't mean that to sound like, trippy or hokey, I mean, but it's like at some point the film itself becomes this, it's separate from me, and it tells me, what it needs to be. And yeah, I mean, it that always surprises me. There's always this, I mean, this is exactly what's happened every single time that I've made a film, whether it's a 4-minute film or like a 2-hour film. It always surprises me in that moment where I'm like, wow, I didn't think that was going to happen. Or, oh gosh, yeah, we got to cut that line out. I didn't see that one coming. But at the same time, I love those moments of pivot, and those moments of surprise. It's like all part of the creative process for me.
Yeah, and I that makes total sense. And I want to go back though, and I wanted to say something. I don't think you sound like a diva at all for not wanting to talk to extras. I 100% would be the same way. I feel like if that were me, I feel like I would tell my wife, like, go talk to them. I'm awkward. You know what I want.
Yeah.
So I understand exactly. What you're saying. But yeah. So you let's go. I want to talk about Knives and Skin for a moment. I personally, I think that movie is so good. I actually watched it again with my wife last night just to prep for this interview. So it's my second time seeing it. And to those who haven't seen it, it's about a teenage girl's disappearance and the effect that it has on the people of the town, especially the other teenage girls. So I have to ask you, Jennifer, are you a David Lynch fan? Because I see a lot of I see a Twin Peaks undertone there, and I just immediately I just saw it. I was like, I gotta ask. I didn't look anything up. I don't know if you're a Lynch fan. I don't know if you ever said anything online. But watching the movie, I was like, this feels like it was inspired by Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I actually am like a David Lynch super fan. But I have to tell you that
nailed it.
But Knives and Skin was actually way more inspired by River's Edge. This.
Oh, I see that though.
This Crispin Glover, Keanu Reeves film from like,
right.
God, when was that made? Like in the mid 80s.
It was like the early 80s. Yeah, like that was early. Yeah, I remember that.
Because here's the crazy thing. So I watched Twin Peaks with the first iteration of Twin Peaks when it first came out. And then I did not watch Twin Peaks again until Knives and Skin was finished, and I was touring around with it because it was getting the reviews there were so many comparisons to Twin Peaks, and I was like, I should watch Twin Peaks again. I mean, but having said that, like, I really, maybe there's more of a connection for me with Knives and Skin to something like Blue Velvet, which is like a small town, somebody finds an ear. There's just this like dark, there's a portal to a sort of a dark world in Blue Velvet. And that happens in Twin Peaks as well. But in terms of the kind of, the upheaval that like a dead girl found by the water, that kind of scenario was much more inspired by something like River's Edge. But no, but ultimately I love how David Lynch leans into the surreal, and I love the way that he really understands that cinema is artificial. Cinema is an art form, and that you can write awkward dialogue. You can write trippy dream sequences. You can introduce, main characters in the last, third of the film. And you can suggest that small town America is the portal to the fourth dimension. I think that there's always a way that he can, can introduce a kind of parallel world. I mean, even something like Mulholland Drive or Lost Highway. Lost Highway might be my favorite film actually of his, in the way that at some point that whole film kind of flips upside down and you enter a kind of a parallel world. And I understand that there's people who cannot handle that sort of anti-logic in a film, but I absolutely love it. And I didn't try to introduce that sort of, a parallel world in Knives and Skin, but I definitely wanted to, to lean into the surreal. I mean, I'm also influenced by the other David Cronenberg, who also, kind of deals with body horror in a very interesting, weird intellectual way.
Absolutely. John and I are huge Cronenberg fans. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I would say that not
but
that
yeah.
we know, I mean, we can talk about this later, but I would say that my section of VHS was deeply influenced by Videodrome.
I'm sure John is going to bring that up to you.
Okay. All right. I'll let that go
so-
till a moment more. Yeah.
But yeah, so I like how you said earlier how like the movies, like your movies kind of tell you what they're going to become, like in a way they start to grow organically, like from the seed, the idea that's planted, the seed, to like once it's there and you're in the cutting room floor and this scene's not making it and this scene is making it. I really appreciate that. Like this is why we interview people. I really like hearing those things, because to someone who like me, who might be a filmmaker one day, like it might be a shitty backyard movie, but I might give it a chance, but still I know things like this and I hear things like this from people, and it gives me like an idea to not feel like I'm just out there like just lost, so I like hearing how things can grow organically. That was definitely cool to hear about that. That's not something I hear, but everybody always has everything pre-planned. It's like you said, like you'll go onto a set and it's like, we did scenes 8, 12, and 24 today, and that's a wrap. And then you get people who are figuring it out as they go, and that's the learning experience, isn't it? Like figuring it out as you go and still making it work.
Yeah, I mean that's how I operate. I don't do storyboards ever. I've never done a storyboard. Or if I have done a sketch on a napkin, it 100% gets lost or forgotten about. I mean, I love being able to show up on set and work with. I've worked with the same DP a lot, Chris Rahano, because we have a little bit of a shorthand, and we kind of know what we both like, and we can both come into, come onto the set and, like talk through at the beginning of the day, like, remember, okay, here's what we're shooting. Here's, we're doing these 4 scenes or whatever. And, I mean, there could be this incredible, like light coming through a window, or there could be, or even if you have all of the windows covered up and it's all going to be artificial light, there just could be this, like, something that happened on the drive over that you're just like, oh, wow, we have to shoot this at a really low angle. That's how we're going to do it. And as long as it doesn't, like add days to the schedule or like, bump up the budget, I love still really letting it be a creative and organic process. I can't imagine anything otherwise. And, I get it that like at some point you have to decide like the lights are going to go here, the camera's going to go here, because switching all of that stuff around can take hours. But I like at the head of, every day being able to change my mind and surrounding myself with people who are kind of like, she changed her mind, no problem, or vice versa, or having Chris come in, or the costumer, the production designer, the gaffer who's designing the lighting, also having, all the department heads coming in and saying, I've changed my mind, and like, hey, what if this happened? And we can talk about it. It's a real, it's diplomatic, it's democratic, it's a negotiation. And, I will always leave room for those conversations because it's always in line with like the mission of making the best film possible,
Right. And you can't always plan the best things. That sometimes the best things just happen. That's just facts.
I mean, it's like the best things always happen by accident on some level. I mean, let's just be for real. So I want to allow for, that sort of like, organic path.
Okay, well, let's go back to Knives at Skin for a second. I wanted to say that the thing that worked for me about the movie is the dialogue. I was raised by my mom and sister, so I've always had an issue with how girls talk in movies, especially when it's guys writing dialogue for a bunch of girls. It usually stands out like a sore thumb. I'm like, it's just not genuine, And I think John Hughes was one of the few that got it right. So more of a compliment than a question, but I just wanted to say good job because the characters were well done and I could buy what they were saying. 100%.
Well, I appreciate that. And the sort of the funny thing is that I have three children, which they're all boys. And, so I can't rely on them at all for any suggestions around dialogue. I would make a film where the dialogue was just like, huh? What? No? Okay. I mean, having said that, they're actually really smart, lovely, incredibly, great young men. But the way that, the way that they communicate verbally is different than the way that, me as their mom, who previously was a teenage girl, communicates. But I'm just like, I don't know, like I still feel, even though I have like a mortgage and a job, I can access that like 15-year-old in me pretty easily.
Yeah, well, like I said, good job. And Knives and Skin was made in 2019 before the pandemic, and now you're back at it. You have a few things going on in 2021, including VHS 94. How was it making films with the COVID-19 restrictions in place?
Well, I would say the hardest thing with doing VHS 94 was that we shot it in Toronto. And so and I was there. I actually got called in really late to the process. So David Bruckner, who was actually supposed to direct the wraparound, got called off of VHS 94 to do Hellraiser. And so in the spring of 2021, the producers, Brad Miska and Josh Goldblum, were really kind of, I'm sure they were kind of like racing around trying to find a director. I would like to think that I was the first person they asked, but there might have been others. I don't want to know about those others if there were. So I got called in kind of after the train had left the station. Chloe had shot her section already. Ryan and Simon were either getting ready to shoot them or had already shot them too, but I think they were actually getting ready to shoot them. And Timo didn't shoot until after me, but he was, he's got that whole kind of Indonesian, filmmaking sweatshop on his own. So I was kind of called in late. And at that point, the US Canadian border was closed to non-essential workers. So I had to have a letter that said I was an essential worker as a filmmaker, which seems kind of absurd. And then there was a mandatory 14-day quarantine once I entered Canada. And so I had to, have a 14-day quarantine, in Toronto, and then for like a 6-day prep and a 5-day shoot, which seemed wacky. But once we started shooting, it was not bad. I mean, everybody wore masks. We had like a COVID counselor or something that kind of like was constantly like rotating masks and hand sanitizer. We got tested for COVID every day. It was not an interference. I was so happy to be back to work, that it was not a big deal. I think the hardest thing was actually just shooting in Canada and having this kind of mandatory 14-day quarantine, and at that same time the entire of Ontario was back to shelter in place because they had a huge uptick in cases there kind of at the end of April and into May. So that meant here's what Toronto did. Like all of the kind of big box stores, which on the one hand, like fuck big box stores, but like big box stores took everything off of the shelves that wasn't essential. So my costume designer, for instance, was going to go in and get like a bunch of, undershirts or, socks for the actors. And normally you could walk into, any one of those stores and just get some packs of shirts or socks or whatever. But all that stuff had been pulled off the shelves. So it was like only food or pharmaceuticals. And which is absurd. Like, what if you work at a hospital and you need new socks? Like, you had to order them. So everybody in Toronto was ordering everything, and groceries, essential stuff, medication. And we were trying to order, like eye blood and other weird stuff that we needed in particular. And thankfully everything arrived on time. But, it was just that part of shooting my section, at least, was was a hassle. But once we got on set, it was pretty rad. And actually the entire cast and crew ended up kind of like bubbling up. Once we started shooting, we all stayed at the same hotel. So we would kind of all go to set together. We would shoot the day, and then we'd all come back to the hotel and, pick up our individually wrapped dinners and go back to our little rooms and eat. So there was not a chance that someone could, leave set, go all the way back home, be exposed to, someone in their household, and come back and bring COVID to set. And this was also before, the vaccination rollout had started to happen in the US, but not in Canada. Nobody was, getting vaccinated in Canada. So, that was also a kind of an interesting wrinkle. So the prep was intense, but once we started going, it was fine. And honestly, like I kind of like I appreciate social distancing on set. I appreciate like don't touch my shit, like on set, because I think that prior to this, people were like up in each other's faces. You'd crowd around Video Village, or you'd crowd around, the crafty table or whatever. I'm so happy to just say, like, look, I need some room. Give me,
I'm with you.
give me some social distancing. So I hope there are some things that I want to go back to the way it was prior. And there's a lot of things that I want to kind of like stay, that we've learned from, a kind of global pandemic.
Did you watch any of the other 3 VHS films before doing your segment for the 4th one?
I did. I got to watch Ryan's and Simon's and Chloe's. I mean, they were not completely finished, but I got to watch all 3 of them in a pretty, in their kind of post-production state. The only one I didn't get to watch was Timo's, and he shot it after mine also. And I had inherited I inherited all of the actors. All the actors had already been attached, and I inherited, a little bit of the story about a SWAT team that raids what they think is a super drug lab, and it turns out to be something else. I could have written something completely different, but I kind of liked that idea. And part of that story was already existing in Ryan's section and Timo's section. So I inherited some constraints. But yeah, I had seen three of the 4 before I started shooting.
Well, okay, so you usually do short films, though, so I imagine that doing a segment for VHS 94 had to come naturally.
Yeah, I mean, I love thinking about, I love the short form format, the short film format rather. And so, yeah, it was, and I kind of wrote the wraparound like a short film. And there's stuff that got cut out, that I think when I read reviews that are so scathing, I'm just kind of like, oh, we actually shot that. And then it hit the cutting room floor. So, but I get it. The producers really I wrote something that was maybe, it's like porn on some level. I think this kind of like, like I wrote too much foreplay and too much dialogue. And then, the producers were kind of like, we just want the bludgeoning, And so I was like, oh, but there could be a context to the bludgeoning, and they're like, no, just get to the bludgeoning. Yeah, I mean, it was a interesting process. Again, writing this wraparound with some inheriting some former components, and then trying to make it my own. And then also because the wraparound is this thing that literally like wraps around the other shorts, and trying to then cut it so that it did try to encapsulate the whole thing. But yeah, short films. I mean, I love short films. I think it's a really still a very interesting format. It's not so appreciated in the US. I think the US filmmaking still thinks of the short film as like a calling card to the feature. But I've had so much success outside of the US with my short films, like, especially in Europe. I mean, there are so many, like hundreds of film festivals, outside of the US that are dedicated to short films and only short films, where here there's a handful and they don't get a lot of press, So, yeah, it was like, I was like, yeah, I know how to do a short film. But then it became like, kind of like 5 short films because it got cut up, So that was also,
Right.
that was something that I was like not entirely prepared for, but I worked with the editor who I adore. And, I kind of did the best that I could on some level. I mean, I think it's still the case that the wraparound is still a hard thing to, it's like a delicate balance to sort of like not do too much narrative, but also not do not enough narrative. And, I don't know. Out of the 4 VHSs, I hope that this is everyone's favorite wraparound. Even though I love and am friends with the people who've done the former wraparounds, I still want to win.
No, we love your wraparound, and honestly, it's the goriest thing you've done. I was surprised by
Absolutely.
how much gore there was in it.
I was like, bring it. Let me crack someone's head open.
Well, okay, so lastly, before I send you over to John, in your other movies, you touch up on serious issues that are personal and attached with a lot of emotion, like A Million Miles Away and Knives and Skin. So, without giving away spoilers, because VHS 94 is still so new, what was the inspiration behind Holy Hell that made you decide to just throw all that away?
Well, so again, I inherited this cast, which included 2 women, and so I inherited two different scripts. One that was written by David Bruckner, one that was written by Simon Barrett, in which the 2 female characters, Petro and Nash, had a very different outcome, in both of their scripts. And I mean, I consider myself a feminist filmmaker. I love thinking about like feminist horror, female representation in horror. So I thought, oh, okay, I've got these 2 rad women. I'm going to figure out what their trajectory is, through this kind of warehouse raid, and then kind of move back from that. So, um, that's kind of where I started. But literally also, I had just rewatched Videodrome, as I mentioned, probably a week before Josh called me. And I was just like, God, this film is so good. It's like, it's got all this great kind of vintage energy, but it's so fresh still, and so weird and so gross. And, just, I mean, like James Wood, like whipping a television set, with Debbie Harry coming in and out. I mean, it's so fantastical and fantastic. And anyway, so, and knowing that the whole franchise of VHS and found footage, I just felt like I wanted to do something that was like meta, like, okay, what if there's these like female SWAT officers who are being really marginalized within their unit, but we realize that at some point, the whole thing flips around, and we realize that they are, that they're like running a cult of underground, video production, where the drug is the video signal. The drug is this analog, RGB, energy or whatever. And that's ambitious, for a wraparound. And I think that some of it's there. I mean, it was all there on the page, and we shot all of it. A lot of it got taken out at some point because, again, the producers were like, it's got to be like where's the action? Where's the action? And I'm used to being able to take time and carve out, like the context and introduce awkward dialogue and this kind of a thing. And I think the found footage format, or specifically found footage in VHS, wants to move a little bit faster. I mean, I still think that there's parts missing that I would have liked to get to put back in, but I really appreciate that. There's something about the wraparound that's very final girls, and I'm always kind of trying to fight against this, the idea that the trope of a horror film is that, girls and women are stalked, attacked, killed, maimed, blah, 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 so I was like, yeah, I can do something here that like leans into final girls, that leans into the idea of like women, these two women kind of controlling the content of media, that maybe they are responsible for all of these tapes that have been found. Yeah, the sort of like the end bludgeoning, and I won't give so much away because I want people to be curious if they haven't seen it, to be curious, like, what is this end bludgeoning? That was really fun to shoot, actually. It was like, I mean, going back to my life as a dancer, that was like choreography, right? I mean, we had like a camera person, the actor, someone the controlling blood. I mean, we did that all practically. So, and everything was covered in plastic, because it just got extremely messy, and really, really good fake blood is really sticky and stains everything. So anyway, that was fun to shoot, but that took a lot of prep. But I feel proud. I feel proud of the, of the general energy of the wraparound for VHS 94.
Yeah, and touching on your comment about the final girls, I did like that line, "We are the final girls and this is our final kill." Is that kind of where that came from, kind of fighting against the final girl trope?
Yeah, and I think that was a line that we actually ADR'd. That was not a line that was in the script. And it was conversations with with Josh and Brad, where they were sort of like, well, we should make this kind of, more obvious and sort of talk about that kind of like the, final girls. And so, but I liked that idea. I was like, yeah, let's talk about the kind of the what final girls mean, in the context of a horror film.
And I have to ask, you mentioned you were from Columbus. Are you a Buckeyes fan?
Oh my gosh. I mean, no, I'm not. I mean, and I would say, I mean, or I don't know. I mean, I don't want you guys to cut me off here, but I mean, I grew up in a football town, right? So it was like
Of course.
so kind of like every Saturday football game, I was just like, what the fuck is going on with these people? I mean, I go home, my mom still lives there, and so is my editor. And I'm actually in post-production for another film I shot this summer. And I happened to be staying near campus on a football Saturday. And I thought I had left my hotel early enough to avoid the football crowd, but I didn't. I was like, driving through a sea of people in red shirts and, the lawns with card tables and red cups and people doing shots at like 10:30 in the morning, which I think at some point in my earlier life, I would have been like, hell yeah, let's do it. And I was just like, this is madness, So I would say, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a college football fan in general. So I'll root for whoever you guys want me to root for tonight.
I was going to say I like the Buckeyes, and I wasn't sure if you were a fan, considering you went and worked at Illinois and they're a rival of Ohio State.
Well, I went to Ohio State. I mean, that's where I went to undergrad. I went to Ohio State as an undergrad, and then but where I teach right now at UIC is thankfully we're considered a sister campus, the one in Chicago. So we don't even have a football team. So I feel real thankful of that, and I'm not even sure how much I like the Chicago Bears, or, I mean, sometimes I feel aligned with like the White Sox because I live on the south side of Chicago. So I feel kind of like, I don't even know what the team is up to these days, but I'm sort of just like, oh, the poor White Sox, go South Side Chicago.
All right. Well, we'll get it back in here to VHS 94. How much freedom were you given to create your wraparound?
I mean, really, honestly, the producers said that I could start from the beginning. I could recast it. I could rewrite the whole thing. But like I said, the like Ryan's section featured one of the actors that I was already attached with, who was also playing like a cop who sells guns to the militia people. And the way what Timo had written also had a similar character. He kind of changed his after I had shot mine, not because of mine, but and then I was eager to get back to work as a filmmaker, but I knew that actors were really eager to get back to being in films again. So I really felt like it wouldn't have been fair for me to just like jettison all 7 of those actors and kind of start the casting process over. So I accepted this kind of skeleton of a SWAT raid on a drug lab that turns into something else with these actors. But I basically wrote I reinvented the entire wraparound. And I mean, I had great conversations with David Bruckner and Brad and Josh, during the script writing process. And they were just like, yeah, go for it. I mean, Chloe wrote Storm Drain, Ryan wrote Terror, Simon wrote, Empty Wake, Timo wrote The Subject. I mean, what's also really cool is that we actually all wrote our own sections. And I mean, I think what happens to the wraparound is also that it's actually not its own short section. It really is this thing that is like a little blip that you get to experience, before the next film. So it's hard to figure out how much an audience is willing to invest when they come back from a short and when they're anticipating the next short. And how much they remember from what they saw in between the other shorts or whatever. So like I said, radio silence, divide and conquer. Other people who had been involved in the previous wraparounds were like, good luck, really just like, good luck with the wraparound. The wraparounds are hard and nobody likes the wraparound. I was like, okay, great.
And there was, as you were saying, the character from the short Terrors actually involved with Holy Hell. Was there a lot of collaboration and working with any of the other directors?
Yeah, well, we definitely had a conversation before I started shooting, to say, like, I told Ryan that I wanted to incorporate, wooden crosses. And I told Chloe that I wanted to incorporate the Channel 6 logo. And I told Simon that we had found a coffin that I wanted to incorporate. And then Timo and I had a great conversation around just the kind of meta-ness of like women making these videotapes. And then in his section, a sort of woman who, whose own body is a video camera, like we had these kind of conversations around that connection to sort of surreal, the kind of surreal and the meta of the whole franchise of VHS. So, yeah, even though, like I said, I came in very late to the game, I was the last director to be attached. And like I said, after David Bruckner had to be kind of like yanked off to do Hellraiser. So it was really important to have the conversation with the other directors to make sure that as much as I possibly could, make it my own, but, make the wraparound in service to the other shorts.
And are you a fan of doing the collaboration kind of style of directing that comes with the anthology?
I mean, I loved the conversations that I had with the other directors for sure. I mean, I think I wish there was more of that. I mean, I think that it still feels like, 4 distinctive short films and then, my little interstitial sections. If I were to get attached to an anthology again, I would want more of a connection. I kind of love anthologies where, maybe they all take place in in one hotel room, or they have something else that's like that actually, connects them all together. I mean, having said that, I still love an anthology. I love, the Twilight Zone, Creep Show, these other ABCs of Death, these kind of things, where really that it's all very disparate, because I do love short films, even not just as a maker, but as a consumer. But if I were to do an anthology again, I would actually want more collaboration. I would love to do an anthology where, for instance, like more of the actors were borrowed from each other. I love what Fear Street did with, like, where it's like spanning time, but the actors are, you have this similar actors, and I don't know, it just feels like more like parallel worlds. I mean, I love that. Again, that's kind of a kind of a David Lynch thing. I would love to do an anthology where it felt like there was that there were different worlds within it, or like this, some of the things like Mystery Train or Night on Earth, those two Jim Jarmusch films, which it's one writer and director, but they kind of feel like an anthology, even though it's one person, but they're different stories that kind of happen in these kind of parallel time zones.
And what challenges did you find to be different versus making the film on your own, like a feature length, versus doing the anthology?
I mean, I think it was the biggest challenge was joining this franchise that sort of already had expectations and a fan base. I remember having conversations, with Brad and Josh about in post-production, where, there was this kind of a really, productive sort of push and pull where I would say, well, I think that this moment should stay. And, a kind of a counter comment that was like, well, that's not really part of the VHS world, So I think there was this, like, coming into not just an anthology, but coming into an anthology franchise, where there's been 3 other VHSs, and that there's the potential that, VHS fans expect something, from the latest VHS. And I, of course, was like, well, let's find new fans, or, like, why do we have to please the old fans, or can't the old fans evolve? I'm sure that, like, the old fans have evolved. So I think that, the sense of maybe from the producer's perspective, this idea, like, if it's not broken, don't fix it, and me also saying, like, oh, I don't know. I think there's ways that we can, rethink found footage, or rethink the context of gore, etc. But it was still, it was still a really productive, learning experience for me as a filmmaker. A challenge that I would rise to again. I'm very happy that I said yes. I mean, there was a moment where I knew it was time sensitive to say yes or no, and I was just like, I talked to my manager and my agent, and I said, I think this is something that could be really cool to do, not just because I was desperate to, like, make a film in 2021 after the whole of, the disaster of 2020, but, I was like, Knives and Skin has a very particular tone and a very particular voice, and it felt important, for me to say, that's not the only thing that I can do. I could do something that's actually much more commercial, much more conventional horror, and still, like, sow my DNA, into that world.
Yeah, and I mean, it worked out. A lot of people kind of thought the VHS, there's a lot of opinions that it was kind of floundering, but this one, I mean, even getting good critic reviews, I think I saw it had like a 95 on Rotten Tomatoes, so it went real well. And I have to say, you brought up Videodrome, and that was one of the questions I had, because I could definitely see the influence for Videodrome. And it's my favorite Cronenberg movie. The technology in the movie's dated, but the message it's always relevant, and that's what I love about it. With the staticky voice that counts down from 10, it immediately made me think of the dream sequence from Prince of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Was that influential in that?
It's funny. I didn't actually, kind of like Twin Peaks. I didn't rewatch Prince of Darkness until this summer, so I wasn't thinking about Prince of Darkness when I did that and of course like that kind of like voice effect was done in post production, but then but I'm sure it was in there, and I just couldn't figure out like why I thought that that was the right move. And then I rewatched Prince of Darkness this summer and I was like, oh yeah, obviously. So I think there's like, it's like we come to a film with not always the references that we can point to, but I had seen that film, that something in there had stuck with me as a moment of like otherworldly, other creature, possession. I could go on and on. But yeah, it's funny. I rewatched that this summer after I had come back from Toronto, and I was like, yeah, that's in there too.
Yeah, like I mean, once I heard the voice, like that was the first thing I thought of was that shared dream sequence from
Yeah.
it came off well. And you've mentioned David Lynch and David Cronenberg as influences on you. Are there any other directors that had an influence on you and your style?
Well, I mean, there's there's a surreal filmmaker, Maya Deren, who actually I have that. If you can see, there's my Maya Deren doll. She's right back there. But maybe no one else can see that but us. But she was a woman who was a dancer, turned filmmaker who made films in the 40s, like really trippy, surreal stuff. And I appreciate filmmakers who can lean into the surreal. I also really as problematic as Roman Polanski's personal life is, I love Rosemary's Baby, I love Repulsion, I mean, I love Knife in the Water. I think there's some, that's really fantastic. I love I'm actually a big Hitchcock fan in terms of style. But more recently, even, speaking of Cronenberg, Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor is absolutely brilliant. I loved Saint Maud. I think Jennifer Kent's Babadook and Nightingale are just so, so interesting. I cannot wait to see what, I have not seen Nia DaCosta's version of Candyman, even though lots of my friends worked on it because they shot it here in Chicago, like that. I'm really I'm real eager to see that. So I try to I don't know that I would saying that I'm a cinephile would mean that like anybody could throw out a name and I'd be like, yes, let's talk about that film or that filmmaker. But I do watch a lot of films, and that really range. I mean, just this afternoon, I rewatched Black Sunday from 1960. This great vampire witch black and white film that
It's a good one.
oh my gosh, it's just so excellent, and I love the original Carrie. I love Brian De Palma, sort of like everything that that he's done. I mean, it's the list is long. Um, and I try to, uh, I try to pay homage to filmmakers that I love, not like, bite their style without acknowledging, the sort of the trajectory that, that I potentially am a part of. But, I watch films constantly, and from sort of like every decade. In one day I could watch something very old, and then I could watch something, really, really new again. And, in terms of even found footage. I mean, when I got attached to VHS 94, I had to go back and rewatch VHS 1 and 2. I mean, I had seen them when they had first come out, but I hadn't watched them again. And it led me to rewatch The Legend of Boggy Creek, this like really wild kind of doc about or like doc drama about like a kind of Bigfoot sort of creature that was something that I had seen when I was little, that just like totally terrified me, or like rewatching the first iteration of Blair Witch, So I try and do my research, but I like filmmakers who lean into the surreal. I love filmmakers who take some risks in terms of their visual storytelling, and think about cinema as art, and that it doesn't always have to feel totally grounded in like the real and what's believable. If you do it the right way, then you bring your audience through that wormhole. And I love I love doing that as a maker, but I love doing that as a watcher of films. I want to go someplace else for 2 hours. I don't want to stay here for 2 hours.
I hear you. And without picking your own, what was your favorite short from VHS 94?
Oh, I love Timo's section. I love the subject. I just thought that was just so surprising, so wild. So the way that was shot was like, I just think that was super innovative in terms of dealing with found footage, but also the kind of, I love Frankenstein stories. I really, really love Frankenstein stories. And not just because Frankenstein, the original monster, was written by a teenage girl. Mary Shelley was 19 when, Frankenstein was published. Yep. But, I love a Frankenstein story. And I thought Timo's was like so genius. And I love sort of his way of kind of gonzo filmmaking. He's there in Jakarta with his whole crew of kind of like friends and family, just doing things kind of like total, rogue style. It's so radical and punk. I love it. So yeah, I loved the subject.
Yeah, that was a good one, and I felt so bad for Jono at the end.
I know. Oh my gosh.
Well, we'd like to thank you for joining us today. And do you have any upcoming projects?
I do. I've actually got another Shudder original that should be coming out in 2022. After I came back from Toronto, I returned to Chicago and I shot a feature-length film called Night's End. We shot it over 13 days. It's a story about a newly divorced single dad who's got these kind of shut-in tendencies. He moves into a new apartment, which is like haunted by a really malevolent ghost. So, it's that sense of sort of being not wanting to go outside, the fear of leaving your apartment, also the fear of staying in your apartment. And it's got some sort of screen-based moments. We stay with him in his real life, but he only communicates with other people, through video conferencing. So even though I hope that this will have like a nice kind of festival launch, I actually think that it'll be a really special film once it starts streaming on Shudder for people to watch on their own screens, because it's got a real claustrophobic, kind of sense. And then I'm shooting a film called Perpetrator in the top quarter of 2022, which is it's kind of a coming of age cat people. So it's a real nuanced sort of shapeshifter story. Proper horror. There may in fact be, a follow-up bludgeoning, maybe even a decapitation. I don't want to ruin it too much, but it's like it was great to get back to filmmaking with VHS 94, but I shot another one right after it, and I've got another one at the top of 2022. So I'm staying busy, and they're all in the Shudder family.
And where can people keep up with you online about your projects?
I'm on Instagram under the Jennifer Reader, which is a good way to follow me. But I also have a Vimeo page. I mean, if you want to see any of the short films, A Million Miles Away, that was mentioned at the top of this, but any of the short films that I've done leading up to, you can watch them free on Vimeo. I actually still have a collection of short films on the Criterion channel. So anyone who has a Criterion subscription can also see a bunch of the short films. I did a film, a very different film from other ones, called Signature Move in 2017. It's on Showtime, and Knives and Skin is still on Hulu, and VHS 94 is on Shudder.
Yes, it's setting all kinds of records on Shudder. It's getting great reviews, and we definitely thank you for joining us today. It was a lot of fun talking to you.
Well, Drew and John, thank you so much. I am high on horror.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks to all the horror hounds and smokers out there for tuning in. Thanks to Jennifer Reeder for joining us today. VHS 94 is amazing, and you should check it out on Shudder now if you haven't. And it's pretty cool Jennifer is teaching future directors on top of being a director herself. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok at High on Horror 420. You can also email us at highonhorror420@gmail.com. And make sure to check out our website, highonhorror.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter and have new guest announcements and episodes delivered right to your inbox. Well, that'll about wrap her up. Catch you later.
Bye, everybody.